Why don't I kick it off?
Please.
And I've been told we have the coolest name for a group, although I'm always hesitant to say that because it raises the bar very high. So hopefully we'll meet that today. Really excited to be sitting next to Matt and Christian. One of the, we're talking about disruption, and what we're going to talk about today and hear from Christian is what they are doing in commercial space as a disruptor. Right now, the action is focused on low Earth orbit and putting satellites in LEO. That seems to be where the energy and attention is really going now in the commercial space industry. And a company came along and decided they were going to go a little different direction. And so we're going to hear about that today. It's exciting to hear about what they're doing. So let's kick it off, Christian. If you could just start with just talking about the origin, the vision of Astranis, and how we got here.
Sure, I'm happy to. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Christian from Astranis. We are building small satellites for high orbits. So small satellites for high orbits. A high orbit is anything above LEO. It's actually it means something scientifically, not just kind of like a nice marketing word. When we're in low Earth orbit, if you're close to the Earth, you're within Earth's deflector shields. So the Earth has a giant spinning ball of metal inside. It creates a magnetic field. That magnetic field protects us from things that are flying in from deep space. So if you're within the deflector shield, you're safe. You can have a phone that works nice. You can not get sunburned if you go to the beach. But if you're outside of those deflector shields, which is where we're building for, higher orbits, this is where GPS is, the thing that's talking to your phone and giving you location every day. It's where all the communication satellites historically have been before we put the shell up in LEO. All of those are outside or even within that very high radiation area. And so it's a very unique challenge. It's something that's hard to do. So why would you do it? Why would you take on the additional challenge? The answer is cost, and the answer is dedicated service. So if you go higher, you can actually be cheaper. You have fewer assets that are needed to cover. So if you're in low Earth orbit, hundreds or thousands of satellites are flying overhead. You've seen the picture of the International Space Station whizzing in front of the moon. An individual satellite only talks to you for 2 minutes if it's in low Earth orbit before it goes to some other part of the world. So that means that you're sharing it with those people that are in that orbit, but it also means that you have to deploy a lot of assets if you're a company like that. We can cover a place on Earth, whether it's Mexico or the Philippines or many other places that we have sold satellites, with one satellite. And so one satellite means low capex for us. It means that we can do it quickly, and all of those things mean that we can pass on those costs to our customers. So why does someone choose an Astranis to try to cover the Philippines? We're building the Philippines' first ever national satellite. It's done now. It's actually sitting in our factory and done and ready to launch. Very exciting. And why would they choose us? The answer is many people in the Philippines are not going to spend $50 or $100 per month on internet. They're going to spend $2 a month on internet. And so we found a pretty cool model. We've built one satellite that's in the sky right now. We've built 4 more that are in our factory ready to launch. We have 10 that we've sold, and we have 100 that we're going to launch by 2030. So we're very excited for what the future holds.
Can you just briefly get into the cost issue? Because I was always under the assumption that when you're talking geo, that's a very expensive proposition. But it sounds like you've figured out ways to keep that cost down. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so historically, these geo satellites, the big gigantic communication satellites are huge. It's like maybe the size of half of this room, something along those lines. They're massive things. It costs $500 million to make. It takes you 5 years to build it. That's the traditional way of doing things. And the reason it was done that way is because of launch. So space launch used to be extremely expensive. It cost a lot to get a rocket up, and to have a dedicated rocket would be prohibitively expensive. And so if you have a very expensive launch, you should pack it as densely as you possibly can, with as much as you possibly can. Well, we have a different model, which is that we are going, first of all, because the cost of launch has come dramatically down, thank you, SpaceX, thank you, reusability. This cost has come way down, so it's now possible to launch things that are lower cost systems to high orbits. That's definitely one. There's a lot of other more technical and maybe less exciting versions, but batteries have gotten a lot smaller and a lot more dense, which makes it possible. You have better propulsion capabilities that allow us to get dropped off in an orbit that's not quite all the way out there, but we actually move ourselves when we're up there. Our satellites are maneuverable. There's lots of, I could talk about that as long as y'all want, but you probably don't want much more than that.
Let's get into transition a little bit to what you're doing now. One of the statistics that really popped off the page for me, and we talked about this a couple of days ago, was the number of people on the globe who do not have internet access, and they're really just basically they're not able to access the market in a way that the other side can. And that is rolled into Astranis' mission, is to reach that large group, 4 billion on Earth.
Yeah, we were just talking before that there was another company, now part of SES, but it was originally called O3B, invented to serve the other 3 billion. And unfortunately now the other 3 billion have become 4 billion without internet access. So it'll be great to see Astranis have a much more tailored approach and bring that service where it's needed.
Yeah, it's a rare problem that's getting worse over time. Lots of things are getting better, but more people are being born into places that are not connected than are being newly connected to the internet. And so this was the original product of Astranis. The first thing that we did was geo telecommunications, try to provide as cheap of services as you possibly can. And that's what the majority of our commercial business, like all of our commercial business has been so far, is comms. I'm sure we'll talk about this, but we're doing other things in high orbits, which are very exciting. And this is some new work from Astranis. But if you've cracked the code about how to go outside those deflector shields, there's a lot that you can do. But we have focused the vast majority of our time, attention, engineering effort to date on trying to fix this problem, which is how do you get connectivity as cheap as possible, cheaper than fiber, cheaper than microwave towers, cheaper than anything else.
So let's, Matt, can you talk a little bit about the work you've done for Astranis, and Zach as well, one of our colleagues, and just because how the complexity and the challenges you face when you're going global.
Well, thanks. I mean, that's I think the story that we're here to tell. In addition to the disruption that Astranis is bringing to the market, it's how does DLA help Astranis deliver, right? And luckily, part of the telecom team at DLA, I shouldn't say luckily, it's certainly by design, but we have experts. I'm masquerading as a lawyer, but I'm not actually a lawyer working at a law firm. We have others on our team that are here from that are also not lawyers, but are experts. That Diana Kelly is here from SpaceX's recent hire. Zach Rosenbaum on our team is an engineer. We have a whole team of engineers that are experts in space, but bring a whole set of tools that primarily focus on international access, right? Of taking a company that's been successful in one market and help them go global, right? So we have the relationships with regulators of spectrum, regulators of space around the world. We also have, DOA of course, also has a global footprint with offices in nearly every country around the world. So we have both the relationships centralized in one place, but also the footprint to cover locally when there's needed depth.
I mean, one quick anecdote to highlight the kind of talent that we have, or the reason we're working with DLA Piper. We actually tried to hire this guy before he joined DLA, and then he chose y'all over us. So congratulations there.
And that was recorded, Matt. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, it really is. I mean, so we find so much value in being able to talk to people who have actually done it before. I mean, people think when they think innovation or this brand new thing, you're innovating, you're doing new stuff, you're just trying new everything. But that's not totally true. I mean, if you read the books, what's I forget who wrote the Innovator book. The whole thesis of the book, like Innovators, was that innovators are not people who do everything differently. They do one thing differently, and they do that one thing differently very well. Everything else, they're boring. That's why all the Silicon Valley guys just wear like black T-shirts every day. They don't want to spend time thinking about like exciting other, dress code. Right. So we love having people that have done it before. Matt helped bring SpaceX connectivity all over the world, get market access in all these different markets. So when Astranis is trying to go get market access at a bunch of different markets, we go to someone who's done it before. And it's the same on the regulatory side. It's amazing to be able to text Zach, and he gets back so quickly. Yes. We just say like, hey, we found this new rule. What does this mean? And he's already seen it before, and he's talked to people at the international stage about it. So incredibly helpful to have people who can help you do the thing that you do best, which is your specific innovation, the specific thing. But all the rest of it, we don't want to get crazy. We just want to do it the right way.
But we talked about the unique skills and capabilities you need in commercial space when you're working in a foreign jurisdiction. Some things we do in law, you can call someone local counsel or do it the traditional way. But you had mentioned that it really does matter if you have boots on the ground. And can you kind of walk through like why that matters in this particular industry for what you're doing as well?
Yeah, I mean, we have to navigate a truly global business. I mean, a lot of places you have a global business, but you're offering the same product maybe translated or something across the world. We really have to work with different administrations. So we have to have the ability to land a radio signal in all these countries. We have to have the ability to there's parking spots in space. We have to go secure our own little parking spot. They call them orbital slots where we can put satellites. We have to coordinate with all the different people that are up there and make sure we're not going to interfere with each other. There's all these global, truly global challenges that are either run by the ITU, which is the United Nations, or by individual administrations all over the world. So if we're going to put up 100 satellites, we might have literally 50 different national administrations that we have to go work with. And so in some cases, there are rules that require you to have people physically on the ground in those countries to submit paperwork in the year of our Lord, 2024. So
Yes.
It's amazing.
Sometimes by fax.
Yeah,
Yes.
literally.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly helpful, incredibly. Mandatory.
Turning to, one of the recurring themes today has been national security. And Astranis recently was awarded by SpaceX a contract that's tied to your next-gen micro geosatellite Omega. One of the things that also comes up is for companies is deciding kind of, which sandbox are they going to play in? Are they going to be a defense contractor, or are they going to be commercial? But you brought up some really interesting points about you can do both, and frankly, when you do both, they actually, it's almost, I don't know if I want to say a synergy, but there is a way to do that, and it works well. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, so both commercial and government customers want you to have the other one. So the word in government is dual use. You've probably heard that before. I mean, the government really wants you to not be entirely reliant on government. If you have only 100% government contracts, then you are 100% reliant on those contracts. If some funding gets taken away from something, you go out of business. That's horrible. They don't want that. They would rather have you be resilient and have a commercial business that's behind it. But then, maybe surprisingly, we've also found it's true vice versa, that if you have a commercial customer from some far-flung country, they love seeing that you're working with the U.S. Department of Defense.
Right.
I mean,
It's a legitimizer.
Yeah, it means that you're a legitimate company. It means that you're secure. They don't have to worry about security, because if you pass the DoD security, you're going to pass their standards. I mean, really, it does work both ways. And so Astranis very much intends to have 50% government business, 50% commercial business forever.
Yeah, anyone who's worked with our government contracting group, particularly in DC, how difficult that is, that whole process. So if you can make it to the finish line, it does send a signal. So Matt, we'll go back to some of the work in other jurisdictions, and there was also the Philippines. Can you kind of walk through the work you did in ZAC?
Yeah, I mean, it's very concrete. It's licensing, it's market access, it's talking to the government, finding out it's often licensing a service that hasn't been done before, so it's fitting a square peg in a round hole, finding something that's, an Astranis satellite is tailored for that market, so making sure that the government is fully on board with that plan. So it's relationship building, and it's finding the right regulatory pathway to get through. And I was thinking, as we were speaking too, of another example, which was Singapore, right, where Singapore came to Astranis and said, we're thinking about developing our own space law here, a space agency, space law all around, and becoming a space player. And they came to Astranis and said, what is your input in this? How do we do this? It was very much off the record, right? It wasn't a formal consultation. It was hey, we understand you're an important player. What would you like to see in this new regulation? And I think wisely, Christian and team came to me and Zach and others at DLA and said, what do we want? What's the best case scenario here? What's the magic wand list of how we would want to see these rules developed? And I think we were able to put together a pretty important contribution to that set of rules.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would say that space law and international space law in particular is very much an actively developing area. It's not set. It's not, a lot of these rules are being developed actively now. So the Philippines, great example. They literally just changed their regulation. There's a new thing in the Philippines of how you get licensed, and when we started, no one had ever gotten it before.
Right.
So what do you do? I mean, you go back to the experience that you have from working with the last regulatory regime. You go take examples from what you've done in other places, and so it helps a lot to be able to have people who have done a lot of different countries before, even when it's a totally brand new thing, which you see surprisingly often in space.
Yeah, this is an industry you have dynamic changes going on in the regulatory structure. Then you have multiple jurisdictions. The technology itself is changing. I find, sometimes in law in particular, a client says, this is what I need. And this seems to be an industry in particular that, the question tends to be more often than not, what do I need to be thinking about at this juncture? What's around the corner? And that's what Matt and Zach and their team do extremely well. Tell us, Christian, where is this all going? Because we were talking about the number of micro geosatellites. You have one up now. And there's obviously a focus on, one to many and the growth and where that's going to go. Where do you see things, 2 years from now?
So the immediate next step is that there's going to be a rocket that is dedicated to Astranis with a big Astranis logo on the side. Nice. It's going to take 4 of our satellites to space. We are extremely excited about it. It's been, we've been building these satellites for a while, and they're sitting in our factory completely done.
And you're taking us to the launch, right?
Yeah, come on by. That'd be great. We'll have a variety of great viewing options. If you've never been to a launch, you must go to one. And you must take your kids because it will inspire them to become engineers and end up on our team someday. Yes, please. So we're going to launch our next 4 satellites, which we're just super excited about. We have just been awarded a contract to help. It's called Resilient GPS. The Space Force is putting together a new program, brand new, very fast. It was created with the Quick Start Authority, which was just given to Space Force by Congress. The first time they ever used it was to try to make GPS more resilient. And they moved out with incredible speed. The program didn't exist 7 months ago or something, and they've already awarded the first contracts, including one to us, which is very exciting. So we're now designing what might be a future GPS constellation, which is incredibly exciting. You all would have your phones all talking to an Astranis satellite if this is a couple years in the future, which is amazing. So there's a lot of potential. I mean, I don't know if y'all watched the Starship catch. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? So they launched the biggest rocket of all time. They caught it using chopsticks. Everything is possible. Yeah. Everything is possible, and so it's exciting. It is an amazing time to be part of the space industry. Just every possibility is open to us, so we're excited about the future.
And in terms of that growth, do you see? It sounds like you're talking a lot about the defense piece of this. But where do you also see the growth 2 or 3 years from now on the commercial side?
What about the Nubia story too?
Oh yeah? Yeah. So the 4 satellites that we're launching right now are going to the United States for in-flight connectivity with Southwest Airlines. So if you all take a lot of flights, your connection's about to be upgraded. Fantastic news. We're also going to cover. We have one satellite. It's called Utility Sat. It's a very unique thing in that it's able to move around on orbit. So it's going to do a lot of different missions. Traditionally, these satellites are very stationary, but our marketing tagline is "Geo is stationary no more." We're going to be able to move it around to a bunch of different places around the world to cover them with individual short-term missions. And then we're also going to have the first national satellite for the Philippines. When the president of the Philippines came to San Francisco for APEC last year, or however many months ago that was, he named our satellite. He knows the program. He was super excited about us working with the commercial partner there. He named it Aguila, which is the Philippines' national bird, the eagle. So we're very excited about the growth in the commercial side, about having those satellites up, about scaling up from 4 satellites this year, 5 next year, 100 by 2030. We're really ramping up very fast, and manufacturing in San Francisco, which I think is underrated.
Yeah, which is very exciting.
Yeah, and you all should come check out the facility. It's very beautiful. We're in a. It used to be building ships during World War I and World War II. It's right on the water. It's like this beautiful, old architecture, but now it's going from ships to spaceships, which we're very excited about.
And the Omega is fully funded.
Yeah. So we raised a substantial Series D this year. With that, Omega, which is our next version of the satellite, is fully funded. It's amazing. I mean, I talked earlier about the kind of cost benefit of having one dedicated satellite versus many LEO satellites. Over the Philippines, just to use an example that's obviously very close to us, at any given time, there are between 20 and 25 Starlink satellites that are kind of hovering. It's not the same ones, but it's like they're rotating over. There's 20 to 25 that are covering the Philippines. We would have the same amount of capacity with a single one of our next generation satellites, which is remarkable. So we're excited about that as well.
That's great. And where's that launch going to happen, by the way?
Cape Canaveral.
As soon as you agreed to invite us, that's right.
That's right.
The entire time.
We'll get you all the details. Yeah, no, it's awesome. So the first launch that we did which was last year, was not only my first launch ever, but I found out at the launch that I was going to have a baby. it was unbelievable. Yeah. He's 9 months old. He's toddling around. He's super cute. I tweet about him all the time. He's gone viral multiple times already on Twitter because I joke, he doubled in size between month 0 and 3. And so I said that by age 10, he'd weighed 7.5 trillion pounds, which is, the math is correct, but he has not quite held to the doubling over the last 6 months.
To get some pictures of him at the launch.
Oh, yeah, the size of a rocket or something, yeah.
So we've been talking about a lot of this is a great story, and but with the balance of our time, let's talk a little bit about the risks and some of the things that you're seeing. Won't call them concerns, but things that you need to be thinking about as you're powering forward with this vision and this business strategy, which is, like I said, it's different.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, in some ways, it's dynamic and a crazy changing industry, and there's all the kind of classic innovation risks about how you build the things and things like that. But on the other hand, it's a very straightforward bet that you make as an employee or as an investor or as a believer in the company. I mean, when we put up this next batch of satellites, there is no doubt whether that capacity is going to be desired. A lot of companies don't know that. A lot of companies don't know that when they put a product out to the market, will they find traction? Will they find customers who want it? We don't have to worry about that. Do you all want more connectivity? Do people that don't have any connectivity want it? It's not a question. It's not a question that we have to answer. Right. So for us, the main things that we think about day to day, the things that keep me up at night, are not will we ever find customers for this thing? That's done. It's been done for a while. The thing that I worry about is, can we scale fast enough? Can we actually ramp up to 100 satellites by 2030 will be more than the rest of the industry combined to high orbits. That's a lot. We know that we have a plan. We know how we're going to do it. We can get up to 24 a year in our current factory without any major gigantic upgrades. But that's going to be a lot of effort to get there. And so we think about hiring and having as many people as we can in our factory. We think about building out. We're building out our machine shop. We're getting some super fancy $1 million CNC mills. We're scaling up. We're very firmly in scale phase. So I worry about how fast we can grow.
Well, thanks for joining us today, and we're excited to be part of this journey. And again, don't forget that launch. You want to be part of that. Thanks again for coming out and
Thank you.
sitting with us.
Thanks so much.
It was really good.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.